Good morning, CWCC. Happy Monday. I am super, super excited for who we have with us today. Representative Leslie Herod, thank you so much for being with us. I was just telling Leslie that I'm saving this video because I know she's going to be president one day. Should she want to? Should she want to? So I'm so excited to have you with us. Leslie, can you tell our membership all about you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you, friend. I am State Representative Leslie Herod. I represent House District 8, which is in Central and Northeast Denver. I'm the first African-American LGBTQ person to hold elected office in Colorado. And I'm proud to chair the Finance Committee for the House and the Vice Chair of the Judiciary Committee. So
Awesome.
I guess my work is all about me is all about work, which I know some of y'all understand, but I'm also seeking balance. I'm excited to have just gotten back from a lovely trip to Martha's Vineyard. I don't know if you've been there before, but
I haven't.
it was nice
I want
to have the water and just relax.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so jealous. You look great and very rested. So that's awesome. And I know, Leslie, you and I have crossed paths over the years just because I am so proud to know you and have gotten just a glimpse of the work that you're doing. And can you kind of talk to us about, what you're working on now and share with our members why it's important?
Sure. Yeah, well, it's interesting because we are obviously in a very complicated time in our nation's history and globally. We've got this pandemic going on, COVID. We also have, racial injustice and the fight for racial justice happening. And so many people becoming more aware of their role in both of these fights, and kind of that personal responsibility, whether it's wearing a mask or having a kitchen table conversation about race. So for me, my work is really to be a part of those conversations in any way that is helpful, to ensure that our community is safe, and that all folks have access to things that we all care about, like, one, happiness, but obviously also education, healthcare, economic opportunities, and business development. And so while it's a really complicated time, I think it's an amazing time to do the work and to make changes that will be lasting.
Well, I know if anyone can do it, you can. And, it's interesting when you're thinking about, all just the racial injustice that's going on right now, and to watch it just, it's sickening, at times. And I think about it, as a white woman, right? And I was thinking about this the other day because you and I are part of the Fly Ladies group, and we see a lot of the things that come across. And I was thinking about it from the perspective of at the Women's Chamber, our whole role is to help advance women in business. And oftentimes we ask men to be advocates for that, right? And to make the commitment to promote more women into positions of leadership. And I was thinking about it from the perspective of, I really want to try harder to be an advocate for women of color, right? To say, all right, I'm going to work my ass off. Like, what can I do? How can I help promote? And what does that look like? And I just think, it's a conversation that we need to have. And oftentimes I'm afraid to have, right? Because I get scared, honestly, like, am I doing enough? Am I doing everything I can? Am I doing what's in my power to do? And so I just want to hold myself accountable and our members accountable to doing that and to being advocates and to doing everything that we can do to lift one another up. And I'll just stop my banter and then I want to ask you what you think about this. But I was looking at some statistics recently and the Equal Rights Amendment movement and how only 30% of white women were for that back then. And it was something like 65% of women of color were for it, right? And we oftentimes think about it like, oh, well, how can I help? But from my perspective, how I look at it is, what can I learn? How can I be better? Because clearly there's advancements on the other side that I haven't even gotten a glimpse of because it's not the lens that I look through. And how do we create an environment where we learn from one another and look at it that way? That it's not always like, well, I'm going to give back, but I'm going to receive as well. And so just kind of wanted to ask you what you thought about that.
Yeah, well, this is one of the reasons why I love you so much, because that's exactly the place to start. It's by having these conversations, thinking about where you can learn and grow, and then
Mhm.
being open to that, and
Yeah.
it's about that acknowledgement that you do play a role, that the information that you might be getting might be only one-sided or might be
Yeah.
from a close perspective that's close to you as opposed to something that's more broad. And so for me, I think it is about that acknowledgement and then having those conversations. So growing up, my mom was in the military. We traveled around all over the world. And I didn't realize how much that shaped my perspective until more recently. For me, it's not something where I could just have, one perspective around me and be fine with that. I
Right.
like to seek out information and learn from other cultures and try
Mhm.
not to judge in that learning, which honestly is very hard,
Yeah.
especially as you get more set in your ways and your
Yeah.
viewpoints. And so for me, it's about having those conversations, acknowledging where you are coming from and what you bring to those conversations. And then I think everyone can learn from everyone. I
Right.
was talking to a good friend of mine from high school that I hadn't seen in years. And he is very much in his home in Castle Rock and doing his realtor thing. And that's what he does. And he's white. And he talked about how he, never saw color, didn't really understand all the stuff that was going on right now, and tries to stay away from the news because it's too depressing.
Right.
And he started talking about why I do what I do, and how we can bring different perspectives to the table. And then from him, I learned he doesn't have a passport. He's never traveled outside of the country, much less outside of Colorado. And
Mhm.
he, like you said, I need to understand this more because right now I'm just seeing one perspective and I'm hearing things that I don't like, but I don't know how to counter that. And I also don't know how to move the conversations forward in a productive way. And so I think owning that and then just saying I want to do that work
Right.
is the perfect place to start. And then do the work, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just really positive and optimistic and hopeful about the place that we're in right now, because I honestly think that so many people are wanting to do the work.
Yeah, it does seem like it. And I can't say enough about or thank you enough for championing these causes because I think it's really important. And we're just honored to have you serve. And anything we can do to help, please let us know.
Oh,
Are there any bills or anything that our members need to know about that we can help you with, or anything that comes to mind that you want our members to know?
yeah. Well, I definitely think that we need to really center racial equity in our conversations right now,
Mhm.
because as we're building and rebuilding from COVID, um, we have a huge opportunity to not only get things back to where they were, but actually to build things into a better place for all of us. And so I think women in particular are in a unique position to say, this is what we need to feel equal in the world, right? And we want to make sure that people of color are included in that conversation as well.
Mhm.
And so when I think about your membership, I think it's really important as we build back the economy, right? Because that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
And as we recover from COVID, and as we think about supporting small businesses and large businesses and employers and employees, that we think about doing that in a way that doesn't only get us back to where we were, but really does center the conversations in equity. What can we do to be a better company? What can we do to support our communities better? How can we ensure that while we're protecting our bottom line, that we're
Yeah.
lifting people up as well? Now is the time to do that. And so I also look to you all to say, what can we do as legislators, as people in the community, to lift up your work around these issues and
Mhm.
ensure that you all recover strong? So I think we really have to focus on racial equity and the economy right now so that we can build together.
Yeah, and what a great space would be created if we could do it all at once. I mean, it's like, when I'm thinking about it, you kind of have to tear down walls to,
Yeah.
hit your bottom and start over. Since many of us are at the bottom and starting over, how do we build that structure back to support it is something super cool to think about.
And sometimes overwhelming, right?
Yeah,
To be honest, it can
yeah,
be extremely overwhelming, and we've got so much going on right now. We also have to protect our mental health. And one thing that I would say is, as we're building our businesses back, as we're building back our society, we also need to focus on mental health. I think a lot of us are realizing that this is not just something that other people need to deal with, but that we all need to have access to better mental health services. And sometimes that happens and resources, and sometimes that happens in our business and our place of work, allowing for space to breathe. And as we're on Zoom calls hour after hour after hour and actually working more from home, I think we need to be really aware of that and think about what we're trying to, again, build back, and support each other, because it is a tough time right now.
Yeah, it is. And it comes out of nowhere, right? Like all of a sudden I'm like, wait, my day's crappy. What is going on? Oh yeah, we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Right? Right. It's like we're supposed to move on and normalize everything, but what does that even mean?
Right.
How do
I
we
know.
do that? And I think we just have to support each other. And one of the main projects I worked on was, and I continue to work on, is Caring for Denver, which is now Colorado's largest mental health foundation in the state, thanks to the taxpayers of Denver who said we need to prioritize mental health and substance use. So I'm now the chair of a foundation board, which is new for me,
That's
but really trying to get more resources out into the community, where people are. And sometimes that's at the art museum, right?
yeah.
Sometimes that's at school or at work, but that's what we really need to make sure that we're normalizing, is taking care of ourselves too.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because you and I have had a conversation about this, and I feel like many problems, like drug use, the criminal justice system, all of it starts with mental health, right? And so I feel like if we can figure that out, not that it's going to solve all the world's problems, but certainly so much can be handled right then and there. So congratulations for serving on that and pushing it, because I do think that, down the road, it's going to make a huge difference.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think, even people think of it as related to big issues like the criminal justice system and things like that. But it really even goes to how likely your kid is going to succeed in school if they have access to those resources and think about mental health. It goes to productivity in the workplace. And unfortunately, also our suicide rates, which are way up. We talk about the COVID death rates, but the death we call death of despair is going way up too. And so we really need to support each other in this moment. And then we need to build that into how we move forward as a society.
Right. Yeah, and also I think, taking the stigma out of mental health too. So much of it can be handled through prevention and making it okay to get help. I know for my son, I've talked to him since he was in elementary school about, reaching out to someone and being able to talk about it, and how that's a positive thing, not a
Yeah.
negative thing.
Absolutely. And we all are stronger for it. And I'm so glad to hear that you're doing that with your son, because it matters. And there's such a block to getting the treatment that you need, or you have to wait till you're in, crisis. And the whole point
Yeah.
is getting it before then,
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And, we just have to start thinking about those kind of things as we look at, how we're going to move forward in business and policy and in every really place in our lives.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Leslie. Okay, I can talk to you for hours, but let's get to the 2 questions for our members, because we find that they learn so much from the answers to these.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about a time in your life, personally, professionally, or both, when you've persevered, and what it was and how you got through it?
Yeah, I think of Caring for Denver as an example, which was a ballot measure, right? Where we asked the voters to support mental health and substance use. And I was told that, one, it was not a model that could work, and that we couldn't no one would support it. Denver wouldn't support this. It wasn't something that was typically done in policy and politics. And I had not very much support from a lot of the higher ups, but instead of doing it the normal way, I decided to go myself and knock doors and go to neighborhood meetings and talk to folks like you all, and say, will you support this effort? And in that work, I started to hear people's stories about how it affects them directly. And I realized it wasn't just a low income or people of color or whatever thing, that it was an all of us thing. And it was super uniting. And in that, I found the strength to really persevere through the opposition, and we won with 70% of the vote, And so for me, it was those stories that connected me to the work and to you. And then it helped me move forward and helped give me the strength I needed to really fight a multi-million-dollar campaign with a quarter of the resources, you know, and to work through the no's, right? Work through the, like, you can't do this. This is not the way it's done. This won't work. We're not going to support you. Work through the no's and find like that personal connection, you know? So for me, that's what inspires me in my work now, and to see it be what it is now is quite amazing.
That is such a, it gave me goosebumps when you said that, because it's such an interesting thing that I think women maybe, it's interesting, like that personal connection is so important to us. But when we
Yeah.
get the rejection, when we are trying to overcome something, I think that maybe we forget to go back and ask ourselves, why is this important to me? And so much of what we struggle with as female leaders can be overcome by
Mhm.
tapping back into that, right? Wait a minute, why did I start doing this in the first place? Like, why is it important for me to grow? Why do I want that promotion? Why do I want that job? Why do I want my business to grow? Because I feel like for women, that's like super important. And if we don't have that, it's hard for us to get there. That is a huge lesson. So
Right.
talk to me about like, what was your lowest point in that process? And like, give me like the day and you were like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah. I think it was, I have to think, because there was a few obviously low points. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
really, really tough. But I think it was after I talked to someone who was pretty prominent, and really wanted that person's support for the initiative, thinking that this person had been my partner for a while in things, and then getting that, that no, getting that like, well, this is not really going to work. I'm not really going to help on this. And that was a pretty big blow, because it really could hurt the campaign and the efforts. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes hearing that is really disappointing, and then you have to go back to your team and put on a smiley face, right, and encourage and motivate people, when maybe you're not believing it yourself at the moment.
Right.
That's probably one of the hardest parts, is to sell something that you just heard some really devastating news about, but then having to go talk to your team and keep them motivated through it all. That was those moments were really tough in the campaign. I think they're tough in a lot of campaigns, but you got to keep pushing through. Um, so I think that's kind of, those kind of no's are the real things that stick with me, and then it's how you turn those into those positives to push forward. And then the work, once you get that yes, and once we won, to
Mm-hmm.
realize that there was a lot of stuff I just didn't know,
Yeah.
and to ask for that help to build the foundation to where it is, was also really tough, because people expect you then to have all the answers and know everything. But sometimes you have to humble yourself and say, I need help. We've passed our biggest hurdle. How are we going to then now build this into the vision that we all have, we all share now? So those moments were pretty tough. But again, I think once you push through them, you learn so much, and then, the outcome is positive.
It's so true. And I think so many of us right now are getting no's, right? Just,
Yeah.
because of the economy and, just people, like you said, are struggling. So it's important to remember, okay, like, how can I push past this no and get to the yes? I certainly need that at the chamber right now. So thank you. I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. Give us a
One more thing
mantra.
one more thing I wanted to add real
Yeah.
quick though too,
Mm-hmm.
is that, I think working through the no's is really a challenging part. Um, but shoot, I just lost my thought. Damn it. You guys
Sorry.
heard that?
Yeah, of
That's
course.
okay. You triggered something when you said it, and then I lost it. Oh well, we'll come back to it if I
Okay.
remember.
Well, if you think of it,
Okay.
sorry. And I bet you it was a good one too. So anyway, okay, well, let's get
Oh, I
to,
got it. I
okay,
got
go
it.
ahead.
So don't forget, and this is something I have to remind myself all the time when I get those no's, is that my priorities may not be yours, right? And so even if I think it's the most important thing in the world, the person who I'm trying to talk to about it may not. And so it's important in those no's to understand the whys, so that you can even build a stronger case moving forward, because mental health might be my priority, but it might not be that for everyone. They want education. Well, now I can talk about how mental health and education are connected in our conversations, and just show where we align, instead of just taking it face value, no, walk away. Like, really
Mhm.
understand how you can help people reprioritize and understand where you are, but then also understand their priorities too.
Yeah, there's a bit of perseverance in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
really just listening, which I feel
Yeah.
like we're not doing enough of these days, right? There's a lot of like shutdown, and I think the only way really around conflict is to understand where that other person is coming from. So that's also a really important message right now.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So, those are the kind of conversations I've started to really appreciate, and having those harder conversations, and then really trying to figure out where people's priorities are, and understanding that my world is not the end all be all. My priorities are not the end all be all. And are we really trying to meet in the middle, or are we just trying to, convince people to see things our way?
Right. Okay, now I really want to know the answer to this question. What's a mantra that you live by?
I have a few, but the ones that stand out to me more recently the most are that, we got to get into good trouble. Now is the time to make trouble. And for me, that is, obviously standing up for what you believe in, but it's also taking those risks that people tell you not to get into, taking
Mm-hmm.
those risks right now makes such a difference, because if you take a big risk, you can have that big reward that we really need right now. We need those breakthroughs in our societies. So as John Lewis says, always get into good trouble. And then the other thing that I think as women, it's so important for us is to be authentic, to live our truths, and to be bold in that, to live in a bold, authentic way. Because again, that aligns with the good trouble. If you put out who you really are, some people may like it, some people may not, but you'll make those true changes and that real growth when you are being yourself. So be authentic. I can't ever be you, as much as I love you and admire you.
I know I
I
can't
can't
be
be
you.
you. And so it's best to just be me, and to grow from where I am, and to also meet people where they are. So just live your authentic self.
Yeah. I think I'm still in the process of like trying to figure out who that is, because I sometimes think as women, we're raised to be pleasers, right? And so much of what we do is sort of stripping away who we are to make others happy. And now I'm just trying to take the time and sit within myself and go, well, wait a minute, what do I stand for? And what does that mean to me? And just trying to figure that out. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big risk to try and figure that out. And you're right. Right now, like, what do we have to lose by taking a big risk or getting into
Right,
good trouble? I think that sounds better than taking a risk.
right, right.
You
Get
know?
into good trouble,
Yeah,
change
yeah,
the world. Or
uh,
even just your house, or
yeah.
like your world. Like just get into some good trouble.
All right. Leslie, thank you so much for your time. It's always so great spending time with you. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for doing this. I look forward to the future conversations
Me
too.
too.
Thanks. Bye.